You ever just crave the goodness that is self-pub? Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads. And as always guys, I'm Andrew, and today I've got another video for you. But before we get into that video, make sure you are liking and subscribing and hitting that bell notification so you can get regular updates for when I put out new content. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that said guys, today this video I just want to talk about some of the best self-pub that I have read in recent years. These are self-published books that I feel very confident in recommending, and I think you should definitely give a try because a lot of the times just self-pub books don't get a lot of the attention that they deserve. And I've got kind of 5 books and or series and then a 6th author that I just always have to talk about because everything I've read by that author is pretty much phenomenal. But that said guys, this is just my opinion. I love these self-pub books. These are currently, I think most of these, I've got one completed trilogy, one series in progress, one that's getting ready to wrap up an arc, one that has a second book coming, and another one that is, I'm still waiting on news of the sequel. And I've got 3 fantasy, one kind of general paranormal kind of fiction, one sci-fi, and then one horror, if I can even do math. But that said, let's just jump right on into this list, because we all love recommendation lists, especially self-published recommendations. And my first one is going to be The Dark That Dwells by Matt Digman and Ryan Roddy. I actually just finished this last month. This is a very, very, very intriguing sci-fi. This is a lot like a video game. Like the entire thing reads like a video game in mine. It's got like the heads-up displays and just ideas that you won't find in traditional sci-fi. It's a very unique kind of space travel. There's like a guard. This is sci-fantasy. I'm very confident in saying sci-fantasy. It's just got larger-than-life characters, very, 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 just very, very expansive and unique ideas that I've never read in a sci-fi book before, mainly because I'm always seeing them in video games. Like I just said, what they pulled off here is really, really extraordinary. I did end up giving this one a 3 out of 5, mainly because I had some issues with some plot armor, and I had some issues with the pacing. That said, if this is a debut at 3 out of 5, and I mean, I think as this simmers in my brain, I want to reread this already, just to see if my opinion has changed. Overall, it's just got a villain for villain's sake. It's got heroes, it's got monsters, it's got space travel, it's got battles, it's got AI, it's got virtual reality. It's got it all. This is a very, very, very interesting book. And I highly recommend you give it a try, because once that second book drops, I think they're going to have polished it up just enough to blow my mind. So that is The Dark That Dwells by Matt Digman and Ryan Roddy for my first recommendation. My second recommendation is going to be a really, really good revenge story. And I believe I've done a dedicated review for this. If I have, I'll go ahead and put it up in the cards. And that is going to be Winds of Strife by U.G. Gutman. Or Yuri. Yuri is a fantastic person and individual. I love talking with Yuri, but I also love his book. What Yuri has done here is just absolutely stunning. He uses the lens of fantasy to address many, many sensitive topics of mental illness and violence and all of these things, and just authoritarianism and just so many big ideas. And it's done in this very, very, very gripping dark fantasy. I first picked this up just because I saw it being talked about by, I believe, Leslie and Pete were talking about this. And I was like, oh, that's got a blue and black cover. And if you know me, I love a good blue and black cover. And I saw that cover and I was like, ooh, with the white and the cloak and then that dark shadow and swimming. Oh, let me tell you what, Nye and Ivy and just all of these great characters are just so compelling. Like, you just get pulled through this story. It grabs you and it pulls you through. And if you listen to this on audio, oh, the narrator really brings these characters to life. Like, it takes an already great story and just thrusts you in, and you are just gripped. I had trouble putting this one down once I started immersion reading it with the audio. It all just came alive for me. This is just a dark and gritty tale, and I absolutely love what Yuri was able to do in this book. And I am very, very interested in the sequel because the ending on this is like no other I have ever seen before. I've never seen fantasy take that approach. And frankly, if this had been traditionally published, I don't think he would have been allowed to do it. And I really want to see what he does with that concept that he has used at the end of this book. So that is number 2, The Winds of Strife by U.G. Gutman. I believe I gave this one a 4 out of 5, and this is another debut by this author. All right, and if we're talking self-pub, you know I got to talk about my boy Daniel with the Nightmare Land Chronicles. Daniel is a fantastic just author, and I love talking with him. I kind of chat with him occasionally on Twitter, and he's just a great, great individual. But his books, him being a great individual aside, his books are fantastic. Let me tell you what, Nightmare Land Chronicles, I haven't read horror in 13 years. And then when I needed a change of pace, somebody, Leslie, recommended Nightmare Land Chronicles to me. And I was like, I don't know if I want to get into horror. And she's like, don't worry, they're novellas. Which, look how thick that is. Look at that, look at that. It's like a 3 hour read. Leslie was like, don't worry, you're going to love this. And I remember she had just read City of Blood. And she's like, I need somebody to talk to. And I was like, don't worry, sis, I got you. I'm going to start reading this right now. And I'll be there in 4 months. And oh my gosh, I just finished the 5th book. I'm currently caught up. I'm eagerly awaiting Lily, which is the 6th and final leg of the first, I would say, arc of the Nightmare Land Chronicles. But Mariah, John, and everybody in this story, it is a dark, gripping, psychological, just kind of terror story. And it takes really, really fascinating aspects. There's a deep, deep, compelling mystery that is still being unraveled for me. And I'm currently caught up. The end of City of Blood was just wow. I highly recommend, if you are wanting to even dip your toe into the horror genre, I highly recommend Nightfall here. Not only is that cover art gorgeous, look at that. How can you not love that cover art? But it's a compelling story with just visual and visceral descriptors and prose. There's no fat here. I mean, you don't have any room for fat on a novella. And Daniel is, I've said this, Daniel's a mad genius. They're full of heart. They're full of just emotion and just life. And I just cannot wait to continue to read Daniel's works. I believe he's got 3 other novels outside of the Nightmare Land Chronicles, which I am actually looking forward to dive into here shortly once I am fully caught up. I want to read Lily first, and then I'm going to jump into those. I highly, highly, highly recommend the Nightmare Land Chronicles. It's one of my favorite reads of all time. Another one that is a brand new favorite of all time so far. I'm currently 4 books into this series, and if you know 4, you see the cover, that's going to be Will White's Unsold. The Cradle series is just fantastic. It's like an anime in book form, and I know that sounds weird to be like, well, that's just manga. Well, no, I mean, this is all text, but I mean, this could easily be adapted into an anime, or a manga even, or a graphic novel. These stories are so great. It's all about found family and powering up. And the fact that this is self-published just blows my mind. He publishes through Hidden Gnome Publishing. I love these editions. Not only are they super floppy, which always makes me super happy because then I know I can just read it like that, open up that book without worrying about that spine. I love these books. Lyndon and Yaren and just everybody in this story is fantastic. I don't want to keep talking about character names because I don't want to do spoilers. This is purely a recommendation video. But if you haven't read Cradle yet, do yourself a favor. Literally, the longest book is maybe twice this length. And so I think the longest book's like in the 500s. They are not long books. They are very digestible. Most of them are like sub 200 to like 330. So they're very, very, very digestible. Very, very good books to read. And I have just been having a blast. Literally, I fly through each of these books in 1 to 2 sittings. No more than that. I have yet to do a 3-sitter on a Cradle book. I almost said an unsold book, but on a Cradle book. Just the trials and tribulations of Wei Shi Linden are just so great. And also, again, Travis Baldree is also a great narrator. So if you want to consume these via Audible, I mean, guys, I believe this is all Kindle Unlimited. And I think that if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can do that kind of whisper sync feature and get the audio as well. So no matter how you consume this book, you are in for a treat. Physical, nice and floppy. Great. Feels great in the hand. Ebook, still great. Or audio, fantastic. I cannot recommend Cradle enough. The 10th book is getting ready to come out, and I am going to be 5 books deep as of in a couple weeks. I think I'm reading the 5th book in a couple weeks' time. And then my next recommendation is, of course, I've already finished this series. It's one of my all-time favorites, and that's going to be Mike Shell's Iconoclast, specifically Aching Gods, Sin Eater, and I believe Idols Fall. Or False Idols. The 3rd book always throws me. It's Idols Fall. I was right the first time. I shouldn't have second-guessed myself. But guys, Iconoclast is so cool. It's almost like Indiana Jones meets... it's like Indiana Jones with like horror and fantasy. So it's like set in a medieval time. But each entry in this book is so interesting because you've kind of come back and kind of do a reset, because basically these people go out, they do their mission, and then they have to report back. So you start in the same place in each book, and then you kind of go on your missions from there with either a new party or... It's really, really interesting. Ulrich Manteo is one of the best protagonists I think I have read in a long time. He's a tragic protagonist because there are horror elements in this fantasy book, specifically delivered through nightmare sequences. And just mid-series, the Sin Eater is one of the bravest books I've read in a while, because I've never seen an author with the guts to take this series in a direction that Mike Shell has done. I have reached out to both Daniel and Mike, and I will be having them on the channel. And in fact, I am going to take this time now to say that in October, I am already going to reread this series. We are going to be doing a read-along for Iconoclast in the Wizardly Duo Discord. There's going to be an unofficial read-along that is co-hosted by Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative. I have been pushing this series a whole lot, and if you want to join us, go ahead and pick up a copy. They're cheap on ebook, or these physical copies are absolutely amazing. They are designed to last. They are designed to be read from. Nice and floppy. They fit open like that. They shut on their own. It's got that crease right there along the edge, so you don't have to worry about opening the cover. These are great physical copies to own. And look at that cover art. So cool. So we're going to be doing a read-along, and at the end of that read-along, I am going to be having Mike Shell on the channel. And I am just so excited to announce that right here, right now. And then to cap this all off, this is kind of going to be the first iteration of me recommending self-pub authors, because I've got a lot of self-published that I'm currently reading. This is one that I read years before BookTube, and I am still enjoying and loving his work. And that is going to be Drew Hayes. You've probably heard me talk about Drew Hayes before, but I love Drew Hayes as an author. And frankly, only one of his books has been a slight misfire for me. And that's just because I thought it was too long. But literally, Drew Hayes writes so many series. He's got his NPC series, which is a D&D based kind of fantasy, turning on the head of the lit RPG sort of genre of fantasy. It's really, really clever. It's a lot of fun. And it is just, it's such a refreshing take on lit RPG. Another one that is paranormal, kind of urban paranormal, is the utterly and uninteresting and unadventurous tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant. I recently recommended this to my good friend Pete from the Ponderings of Pete. He did a recommendation video, which I will go ahead and link up in the cards. And in this, he loved it. Mainly, Pete is an accountant, and so is Fred. And the whole thing with Fred the Vampire Accountant is he's not a typical vampire. Fred was living his life. He was very unimpressive, but he was a good accountant. And then one day, Fred got turned, and his sire just left him. So Fred never learned how to be a proper accountant. He tried doing the whole stalking in the middle of the night and pouncing on people to drink their blood. And he realized he was absolutely crap at it. And so he decided to just run a little con, figured out a different way to get blood, decided to work from home, blacked out his windows, and continued to be an accountant. And the way this series goes is Fred's just trying to live his life, his unlife, excuse me. He's trying to live his unlife just like he lived his life. But now that he's got this paranormal world to explore, he kind of just continues to grow by being an accountant, and it's fantastic. Drew Hayes also has the Superpowered series, which if you were into superheroes or even My Hero Academia, this is very, very similar to My Hero Academia. And the Superpowered series essentially is just, you've got three classes of people. You've got your normals, you've got your powers, which are below the normals because they are people with powers who cannot control them and are deemed a danger to society. You then have your supers. Supers have a wide range of powers, but a lot of them choose to become superheroes. But in order to do that, you have to go to college and get a certification. And at each college can only produce 10 heroes a year. It is a very, very strict, it's very grueling, and it narrows down the cast of characters fast. Well, this series follows the first group of powards who are basically undergone a treatment to become supers, and then they are integrated into this college setting to see if they have what it takes to become superheroes and if the treatment will stick. And you deal with this core group of people's trials and tribulations across 4 years, and 4 very big books, but very great books. The structure of those books is very short chapters, and I mean, it just flies by. And the narrator, I believe that's done by no, it's not Nick Podell. I forget who the narrator is, and I'm going to kick myself later at the end of this filming. But the narrator is absolutely fantastic. I love these audiobooks. They are long. They are the 4th one's almost Stormlight length, but it's still well worth it. You just get invested in these characters' lives and everything like that. And then the last series that he has is, of course, The Villain's Code, which the first one is Forging of Festus. Sorry, has a small brain freeze right there. And then there's Bones of the Past, I believe, for the second book. And this takes the lens of what if the villains are the ones keeping crime in check just because they kind of want to keep the superheroes off their back. And it kind of just goes from a young girl who tries to steal and then gets caught by the villains, and they put her into an initiate program to train her up to see if she has what it takes to join the Villains Guild. But that said, guys, those are kind of the 5 books and or series I wanted to talk about, and then, of course, Drew Hayes as the author. Let me know in the comments down below who some of your favorite self-pub authors and or books are. Have you read any of my recommendations? Are you planning on picking some of them up? Please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to have a great conversation with you. And as always, if you want to talk on a more regular basis, make sure to check the description down below for the link to the Wizardly Duo Discord. We would love to have you. So, until next time, guys, peace out. Stay magical.